Hi, everybody. I am Dor Gorevitz, CEO of the Velocity Network Foundation, and I have with me today Zach Daigle, President at PreCheck, a Cisive company and a leader in employment screening and license monitoring solutions tailored for the healthcare industry. And we're here to talk about PreCheck, Velocity Network, and all things blockchain for HR. So Zach, thank you for joining us.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. Why don't you start with presenting yourself and how did you find yourself in the screening space?
Yeah, so I've actually spent most of my professional life in this space. This was really my passion. So I've been doing this for about 18 years, almost 2 decades, working very closely with acute care hospital systems and working across HR leadership, talent acquisition leaders, compliance leaders, as well as medical staff, service and credentialing leaders. So really 2 decades of kind of honing our skills and being the largest kind of vertical pure play in the US healthcare industry. And now a part of the Cisive organization, which really focuses on the highly regulated verticals. So we really are a nice fit with the organization and still maintaining our focus within the PreCheck brand exclusively for healthcare.
Yeah. So could you describe PreCheck in a few sentences for audiences that are not familiar with what exactly you're doing, the type of solution you provide, the use cases you cover, prominent customers, number of lives you're touching every year, and so on?
Sure. So as I stated, we really built the business around the acute care hospital market, and our core business, probably about 65% of our revenue, come from pre-employment background screening. So the 100-year-old resume verification model, criminal investigations, primary source methodologies that we really learned from accreditation standards like the Joint Commission, and then applied those to our workflows, our business models, and our business processes to ensure that for our clients, we have high efficacy compliance programs end to end. And so really what we did is we looked at the entire continuum from candidate engagement all the way through separation from the organization. And we identified all of the key milestone areas along that continuum where you would need to screen or credential or monitor any type of personnel, including employees, volunteers, non-employed physicians, students even coming in for clinical rotation. And then we challenged ourselves to build best-in-class solutions that meet or exceed those compliance standards along that continuum. And so that's really how we built out our suite of solutions that today provide everything on the pre-employment side, from criminal background check, drug testing, occupational health testing, then on the onboarding side for I-9 and right to work verification, and then in the ongoing monitoring for continuous criminal monitoring, license monitoring. Today, we have about 87% of all licensing boards in the US fully automated, and we monitor in near real time for, I think, over 2,600 license types and certification types in the US healthcare market. And we also have some employment verification outsourcing services that we can provide for clients who want to provide payroll data to us. And then we will handle any inbound requests for salary verification and work history verification as well.
That's amazing. So, and how many lives are you touching every year?
So I think today we're probably monitoring around 1.2 million healthcare workers' credentials in virtual real time with our license monitoring solutions. But I think we partner with over half of the US hospitals today in one way, shape, or form. So about 55% of all hospitals are using PreCheck services. And I think the number of lives is probably around 3 million lives that we're impacting in terms of those in the hospital ecosystem on an annual basis. When you look at our batch screening solutions, we probably touch a larger number of people. There's millions and millions of transactions, but really looking at those folks that are on the continuum I described, they're kind of managing their career. We're interacting with about 3 million of those US healthcare workers today.
That's amazing. So I know that the decision to join Velocity Network came from Cisive, right, as the parent company. But then you, as the president of PreCheck, you were pulled in, and you are now leading the charge, so to speak. So my question to you is, what made you join this effort alongside the other HCM and education titan companies, especially since this has the potential to displace a lot of what we're doing?
Yeah, great question. I think part of it's philosophical. So Jim Owens, the Cisive CEO, and I are really kindred spirits. We've both been here for 18 years in our companies and building these businesses. We understand that we are a tech-enabled service with more and more of the tech side becoming critically important to achieve scalability, to really impact our customers. We really don't like to put lipstick on a pig here. We're not really incrementalist. We believe that we need to disrupt the space. And we'd much rather be in the driver's seat as a disruptor than reacting to disruption as it occurs around us. And so my involvement, kind of arm in arm with Jim, is that for the healthcare cluster, I feel like that we have a very important voice. We understand the traditional methods, the legacy methods for acquiring an employment verification, an education verification, a license verification. And we understand clearly that we must change the way it's done, that there are labor shortages coming in terms of nursing. 1 million nurse shortage by the end of 2023 is what we're hearing. We have to find a way to partner with our talent acquisition clients and HR clients in healthcare to really invert the funnel, to create a pool, a waiting room of talent, to shorten the days to fill metric that they're wrestling with on a daily basis, to get people into the ORs, to the ERs, labor and delivery, these critical emergency department roles, where they just can't wait 5 business days to get a person in from the time of offer. So we feel like Velocity provides the structure and the framework for us to do the disruption that we're going to do as a company regardless. And it provides governance. It provides a way to have a unified voice, and it provides a way to create trust in the ecosystem for people to adopt this new way of thinking, which is a paradigm shift that's going to be challenging for some people in the early days as we work towards adoption. So I just think the way to frame it up is that we want to be disruptors and not be disrupted and sit on our hands. And that's always been who we are as companies.
I think that's amazing. I continue to be impressed of these trailblazers mentality that your organization has. And, it was easier to push back and say, hey, we don't want to be part of this because this is going to be cannibalizing our business. But instead, you're moving full thrust ahead. And this is amazing to me. And to be honest, if you reduce your organizational competencies to the bare truth of it, so you're experts in tech, data, and trust combined together. So you're going to, and Velocity Network is tech, data, and trust. So, if you play your cards right, I think that would be probably one of the most interesting business opportunities for organizations in your space. So I, as I said, I continue to be impressed by the vision of yourself and obviously by the leadership of Jim. It's amazing.
Well, thank you for that. And I think the only other word I would add to that, I think we're going to be curators of a new experience. And I think that you take those 3 pillars that you mentioned and you have to kind of peanut butter a compliance element over the top of that we're extremely knowledgeable with our brain trust inside of Cisive and PreCheck to understand how we exert those compliance programs to these verticals that are highly regulated. They evolve very quickly. And so our clients really need our partnership to adopt some of these disruptive technologies and approaches. And really, it's a business problem that we're solving with the underlying technology. I think is a great fit for it, but we're going to have to solve the problem one way or another. I think distributed ledger technology provides just a great foundational way to do that because of the immutable nature of the records and the trust that it creates across the ecosystem. So I think compliance and curation are going to be 2 areas where you see us really step up and lead in the future. And our clients, by doing business with us, will be able to be disruptive through our partnership and leverage these new technologies and approaches this year, which is really exciting.
This is all great, but my question was not why did you start engaging with blockchain and the space, but rather why did you join the others and not try to evolve and develop something of your own? That was my key question here.
Sure. I do think that in this case, in some complex cases like this one, it takes a village. And that to create, I've always looked at this problem for the last decade, and I think there's a prime the pump challenge. And how do we prime the pump? We have to achieve critical mass in terms of consumers, people who want to own their own credentials and create a more self-sovereign environment where they can go and apply for jobs easily and not have to go look for the same information over and over. So we have to have that angle. And if we look at the partners that are in like the healthcare cluster, these are great brands that have far-reaching, great reach in terms of the number of people they touch. And so that helps to prime the pump by having more people. I think also these brands together, unified, creates the trust needed to get employer constituents to come to the table and say, you know what, if these brands are coming together and can work together for a common goal, then we all can as well. Because I know that employers today, especially with labor nurse shortages, are worried about competing for the same talent. But if everybody's coming together, it's going to improve the entire ecosystem. And we really believe that philosophically, that you can't solve this as a private kind of commercial solution, because you will never prime the pump yourself, even if you are very large.
I totally agree. I think I think that most of all, above all, it's an interoperability play, right? Because individuals move between dozens of employers and education vendors and training vendors and jurisdictions and countries and sectors, and all these employers and education institutions utilize many different types of systems of record, right? So we need to play the interoperability game. Otherwise, people will not be able to curate a comprehensive picture of their career identity that will be, and then would be also able to utilize it across the global labor market. So everybody has to work under the same framework, utilizing the same blockchain rails. That's one piece. But then above the tech layer, you have syntax of data, semantics of data, and overall compliance framework that has to do with the sensitivity of the data that is processed through that conduit. And all these require an industry play, because without an industry play that is orchestrated and synchronized, this will never be a reality. Now, to drive an industry play, you have to have a utility layer that is not a commercial utility layer, is not a third-party proprietary utility layer, because all these vendors will not be betting these critical functions and building them on top of a third-party utility layer that can change the rule at any given time. This is what's so unique about Velocity Network, I think, that it's an open, shared, distributed and decentralized utility layer owned by no single entity, operated by no single entity. The infrastructure is completely decentralized, so there is no single entity with its finger on the kill switch, but also governance is decentralized. And the governing organization of the network is the Velocity Network Foundation, and the members of the network, the participants of the network, are the one electing the governing board every year, so that also not only the infrastructure is decentralized, but also the governance and the control is decentralized. And that's what allows so many vendors, fierce competitors, right, to come and share that utility layer, trust not each other, but rather trust the code, trust the decentralization, and leverage it for the benefit of their constituents. That's a good segue to my next question. So if you look towards your customers and constituents, what would be the benefits that they will see? What type of use cases you will be rolling out? What type of future you can try to describe to them as you are implementing your solutions on top of Velocity Network?
Yeah, this is a really important question. I think more important than we probably even think. I think, people are looking on how can you impact me in 2021? And I think in terms of talent acquisition, we'll start there, is that I think some of the low-hanging fruit here is that the old way of doing past employment verification and rechecking an education that's already completed or some kind of certification that's already been completed, that has static value over time, that's going the way of the dodo bird. So what I would say to those talent acquisition leaders is, by partnering with our company, by partnering with PreCheck and our working with this, Velocity Network Foundation, I say we're going to shorten the time to fill metric for you materially by days, not hours. And so imagine taking the long pole of the tent of a traditional background screen and removing those long poles, and taking out old past employment, old education, and having them done at the day today. When you trigger a background check as the time of offer in your applicant tracking system, those are already done. We're going to provide that to you through our early implementation on the rails of Velocity. So I would say time to fill, which is one of the most critical metrics for all of our talent acquisition leadership and HR leadership professionals that we partner with. So I think that's a big one. When you do that, you also change the cost structure for a background screening provider. And by changing our cost structure, we're going to be able to provide more competitive pricing to you. It's going to lower your total cost of ownership of this program. So faster and more cost effective. Those are two major things on these leaders' plates this year. And we believe that we're going to be able to impact that. Of course, as we achieve critical mass and the more our clients get involved, the more consumers and constituents will claim records, and they will have a bigger impact on the percentage of items that are already verified at the time of offer. So that's why we encourage people to get involved. But I think those are two big metrics or values that I would look at to our customers and say, this is how it's going to impact you. And early on is those two areas. I would say a third that's important too, just to mention, is candidate experience. So as you're dealing with shortages, you're going to have a bigger and bigger percentage of new grads coming in. And these new grads are looking at their first experience with you as an employer and saying, how cutting edge are you? How forward thinking are you? How easy is this process? And if I'm leveraging a Holder app wallet on Velocity to supply certain credentials about myself ahead of time, and I go from offer to orientation in one business day rather than 5 or 7 or 10, you're going to look really good as a brand, as an organization. And you're going to have that person go tell their friends about interacting with you. And so we're going to be able to provide that type of experience to your candidates. So I think those three things are probably at the top of the list for talent acquisition leaders if you go and talk to them this year. And so I would say that's what they can expect.
No, I totally agree with that. I think that, when we talk to healthcare practitioners, licensed practitioners, for them, right, the verification involves a lot of friction, right?
Yeah.
A lot of friction, a lot of manual work that they need to do to present their credentials and history and so on, and curate that, for the purpose of a single verification. So taking that friction out of the process would probably would make a lot to improve the candidate experience. What about compliance and license monitoring? Do you see anything happening there?
Well, we built a proprietary solution for license monitoring years ago, but I do think that it's going to evolve like everything else. Now, these are more dynamic credentials, right? So a license verification or a status could change any moment. I think what's going to happen is really an inversion from a pull mentality to more of a push mentality of partnering with the issuing authorities at the primary source and pushing to clients at the minute that a record changes. So taking risk, in some organizations, that might be 24 months of risk on an RN in the US that has a 24-month renewal cycle. We've taken them down to 30 days or every day, but we're going to take it down to seconds and minutes.
Correct.
With these future implementations. So I think there's just going to be this continued paradigm shift away from pulling and searching for data. And it's more about curating the experience of the data and having primary source or proxy primary source access to those records and pushing critical statuses to the right personas at the right time, kind of in that value chain.
That's amazing. So you personally are involved, and you're the president of the company, but you find the time to personally be involved in much of the work done on Velocity Network Foundation, investing hours every week in the work that we're doing. What's your personal take? What drives you personally?
So personally, I, in 2 decades of doing this, I have a great deal of passion for, patient safety, staff safety, advancing the quality of healthcare in this country. We have an incredible team of people who I think are the best in the world at doing what we do. We provide the most accurate background screening credentialing solutions today. But I think to evolve our program, to challenge the status quo is so critically important for our team. And it's some ways, data is easier to access, but in a lot of ways, it becomes more difficult to ensure the efficacy of what you're providing. And I think that leveraging new technologies that provide immutable records, that give sovereignty to people and consumers, we just think it's the right thing. We think it benefits everybody in the ecosystem. And so, like I said before, we don't really want to be incrementalists and be a little bit faster at background screening or be a little better at data acquisition. We want to flip the whole thing on its head. And we want to have our entire team of all of our team members focus on how we're going to completely disrupt the space and upskilling our workforce to deal with these new technologies, to partner with primary sources. So I think we're just all very excited about being the leaders and changing the way this is done because it improves the lives of everybody in the ecosystem. And that's what's really important.
And what would be your message to labor market stakeholders now in this context? I mean, if you have one message, that you can say to them.
I would say this: it is much more exciting to be disruptive and to create tremendous, unprecedented value for your organization than it is a year from now to be reacting and scrambling and asking for budget and resource to try to leverage and catch lightning in a bottle on something that's already happening around you. So get involved early, be an early adopter, put energy behind this and focus behind this, because everybody's going to benefit, but the early movers and the early adopters, I think, are going to benefit the most. And therefore, they're going to have the least challenges in terms of finding the right talent for their organization when it's needed. And that's going to benefit their business. And the other thing I would say is that this old applicant tracking model of people applying for jobs in their boxer shorts at home and then going through an ATS, I think we need to move from applicant tracking to applicant development. Understanding the roles that we need ahead of time, understanding the people coming into that funnel and matching them across technologies like this, and allowing people's careers to evolve much faster, and having the information we need at our fingertips at the right moment in that continuum is just so exciting to me. And I think there's other applications in terms of talent management, succession planning, so many different things that are going to come out of this in this kind of profile-centric management style of talent that is just really exciting. And I think a lot of the applications for this haven't even been thought of yet. And so that's part of the exciting. But if you get in early, if you get in and you adopt early, you're going to be in the driver's seat in terms of how do we utilize this. And you're going to have a differentiated advantage, I think, over your competitors.
I'm inspired. and I'm the founder of all this. Well, this is it for us on this session. I want to thank you so much, Zach. This has been super interesting, and thank you for your insight. That was amazing. I really enjoyed it, and we'll probably be talking very soon. So thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. We're very excited to be moving forward.